Okay, welcome back for the third part of One Man's Faith. Let's go over now to Exodus 20. God got them out into the wilderness. He got them fed, and then he led them around to Mount Sinai. And when he got to Mount Sinai, God wanted to speak to them, okay? This was the formation of the covenant. Now, we talked last time about the fact that there were upwards to 3 million people that Moses had responsibility for and God brought out of Egypt. If you look, there were 600 men, and these were fighting age men. They each probably had a wife, and then they had at least probably 2 kids because they were, the part of their edict was to be fruitful and multiply. And so they formed families because of that. So we got this bunch of people, and so they park at Mount Sinai, and God said, hey, prepare the people, I want to speak to them. And so Moses got them prepared. They gathered around the base of the mountain, and chapter 20 of Exodus says, and God spoke all these words. And what he gave them was what we call the 10 Commandments. You shall not have any other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself idols. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. You shall remember the Sabbath. You shall honor your father and mother. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not bear false witness. You shall not covet your neighbor's house or wife. This God spoke to them. He spoke it out. And it says that the people perceived the thunder and the lightning flashes and the sound of the trumpet and the mountain smoking, and when the people saw it, they trembled and stood at a difference. God scared them. But he wanted them to know that, hey, listen, you don't have a God that can't speak to you. You see, they've been living now in Egypt for 400 years. They probably were used to the Egyptian gods. And listen, an idol can't, if I said this was an idol, this is my iPad, God of the iPad, listen, it's not going to speak back to me. Now, Siri may, but it won't because it's not a God. It's not the true God. Gods cannot speak. Gods cannot help. As a matter of fact, most gods want to have control over you. But as we go, as you read through, as we go through Exodus here, you're going to see that God didn't want just that. Nowhere does he say, hey, I'm going to control you. He says, I want you to be my people. As a matter of fact, let's see what chapter it is. I think it's chapter 25. We hadn't gotten there yet, but so I'm just skipping ahead. Oh, I thought it was before he started doing that. God says, I want you to build me a sanctuary. Well, one place is in chapter 29. He says, I will dwell among the sons of Israel and be their God. He doesn't say, I will dwell. As a matter of fact, most gods don't want to dwell with man. God says, I want to dwell with you. I want to live with you. I want to be your God. I want to love you. I want to carry you through. And this is what he does for us. And so the people said, Moses, you speak to us. Let God speak to you, and you speak to us. Okay, and then he went up into the mountain, and it says that the Lord gave ordinances, which after the 10 Commandments, he kind of said, well, okay, if you have a slave, you'll keep him for 6 years. This is chapters 21, 22, and part of 23. If you strike a man, you'll be put to death. If you strike your mother and father, you will die. If you curse your mother and father, you will die. You see, We may think these is hard, but it shows us the heart of God for parents. We may not like our parents. That has nothing to do with it. Just as we may not like the government. You know, there's some people, I don't know why, but they decide they want to boycott Trump. Listen, he is the president. Biblically, we have to respect him. We can't go around and be part of these not my president day and things like that. We can't. Not as a Christian. It's biblically unlawful for us because it shows disrespect for a man that God has put in that position. Even if it was Obama again, it wouldn't make any difference. He's in that position because God placed him in that position. And we cannot disrespect what God has put in place. You're coming against God when you do. And so we see here that mothers and fathers have a place of honor. As a matter of fact, Ephesians tells us, honor your mother and father, for this is the first promise with how does he put that? I forgot. These things are just coming into my mind, and I'm throwing them out. Or it's the first command with a promise. That's what it was. Honor your father and mother, that it may be well with you, and that you may live long. It's the first command with a promise of well-being. If you honor your mother and father, it doesn't matter what they've done. We have to show respect and honor. And so God goes through this. God even says here, do not let you shall not allow a sorceress to live. Why? Because they're working in the dark. They're on the dark side. And sorcery is attached to witchcraft, which is rebellion. As a matter of fact, when Samuel and Saul had their little discussion, Samuel told Saul, rebellion is witchcraft. And that it means rebellion towards God. And so we have these things that God did. He gave them these commands. And interestingly, it says, let's see if I can find it real quick. God was saying to Moses in chapter 23, my angel will go before you and bring you to the land of the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and all these other termites, and I will destroy them. Okay, it's a promise from God. You shall not worship their gods, nor serve them, nor do according to their deeds. Now, the deeds were they did human sacrifice, i.e., a form of abortion. They took babies and sacrificed them to their gods. Verse 25 of 23 says, but you shall serve the Lord your God, and he will bless your bread and your water, and I will remove sickness from your midst. There shall be no one miscarrying or barren in your lands. I will fulfill the number of your days. What's this based on? Observing and serving the Lord your God. See, if we could grasp hold of this and learn not to serve ourselves, but to serve him, there's a different way for us to walk. There's a different way for us to walk. And then in chapter 24, oh, yeah, here's where I want to go. It said in verse 3, Moses came and recounted to the people all the words that the Lord, I keep losing my place, all the words of the Lord and the ordinances, and we were just reading some of them verses in chapters 21, 2, and 3. And all the people answered and said, all the words the Lord has spoken, we will do. And listen, verse 4, and Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. Then he rose early in the morning and built an altar at the foot of the mountain and 12 pillars with 12 tribes of Israel. And it says in verse 7, and he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people. He took the book. What book? The book he had just written. There's a book here is really scroll. They didn't have, they didn't have bindings and things like this. It was, a long thing. It could be that by then it could have been papyrus, because that's what the Egyptians developed. It could have been skin. I've got a portion of a Torah scroll, and it's written on a skin. It's a beautiful piece of work. It's just one of the pages, because they would take a sheet of some animal skin and sew them together and form a really long roll based on what, whether like it was Genesis or Exodus or whatever. If you get one that has all 5 books together, the sucker weighs about 40 pounds or 50 maybe. But that's the way that they were made. So Moses took everything that God had talked to him. This is chapter 20, 1, 2, and 3. And he wrote them down on a scroll, and then he read it back to them, and the people said, whatever the Lord says we will do, we will be obedient. And I've got to be obedient to my tech who tells me it's time for a break. So let's take this last break, and I'll be right back.